Coming up on Man Enough.
It's not like we say like, oh, you had a bad dad. That would be clear. Oh, your dad sucked. So sorry for you. Instead, we go, you have daddy issues and it's your thing and it's your fault. It doesn't really go the other way.
I wonder how my daughter might speak of me. In fact, live right now.
Yes.
Hello, baby girl. Tell me 3 things I did right and 3 things I could have did better.
Okay, let's do this.
Being man enough, what does that mean?
It's really manly to mess up, admit you're wrong, and then grow.
I couldn't accept that I was evil. So maybe I'm broken, but those broken things could be corrected.
Intimacy between a father and a son is me just wanting to put my head in your lap.
I love you, son.
You haven't called me benevolent sexist, but my experience is women are better.
Even if it's a positive, it's still not equality.
I don't blame men for that. I just blame the system.
This
is
Man Enough.
Welcome, everyone, to Man Enough. I am Andy Grammer.
I'm Jamey.
I'm Liz Plank.
I'm getting more confident in my seat here, filling in for Justin Baldoni, and it has been really great. I'm really enjoying myself. I'm going home, laying before I fall asleep and just taking all of this stuff in a really, really good way.
Oh, wow. You did a really good job there.
Yeah.
Didn't he, Liz?
You
really did.
You really did.
It's impossible to have conversations like this and not have it sit with you.
Yeah.
And go whoa, where am I measuring up? Where am I definitely not measuring up? You know?
I'll tell you something. I want us to get into, we're going to talk about some cool stuff. But we would have started about 10 or 15 minutes ago. We're running 15 minutes late. Why are we running late, Liz? You look amazing, but did you have something in your tooth?
I ate a bagel. A really delicious bagel.
Is that such a crime?
That I immediately regretted as soon as we sat down.
And you had a seed stuck in your tooth.
Just a very little seed.
Yo, one
like a mini
smile,
seed.
it was worth it. It was worth it.
And I had a panic attack. There's no floss. Everyone's waiting on me. And that's my prototypical nightmare. I can't do this small thing. I used to be a waitress. So in my waitress nightmares, it was I can't do a small math equation. I can't do 2 minus 1. And then everyone's waiting for me and everyone's watching me.
Yeah.
And this was my nightmare.
This is your nightmare.
Thank you for all being so patient and compassionate.
Our pleasure.
And highlighting it.
Let's jump into a couple of things. Obviously, we want to this episode is just the 3 of us.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think this one's going to be special because we're going to center our conversation around daddy issues.
Degendering. Daddy issues.
Daddy issues. Andy, why don't you share with us why this was a topic that we thought we'd talk about?
Well, I have a song that recently came out called Good Man. And the idea of the song, I wrote it. My second daughter was born in my living room. And I was sitting at my piano while my wife was going through labor. And not I'm with her, but that's actually a long period of time. And I was just thinking okay, this new little girl is coming. I already have an older girl. I'm going to tell you to do a lot of things and you're not going to do that many of them. Or you're going to come up with for yourself how you live your life. And so what is my actual role here? And my actual role is to feel like home. And so the line of the song is when it's time, if I've done it right, only a good man will feel like home. And that, when I was going to release the song, it brought up this idea of daddy issues. And it made me emotional. I don't know if this is where we're at these days. It's writing a post writing a post for Instagram. And I was emotional for women who have been saddled with this, this horrible phrase. Because when it's not like we say oh, you had a bad dad. That would be clear. Oh, your dad sucked. So sorry for you. Instead, we go, you have daddy issues and it's your thing and it's your fault. That's what's implied, I think.
It is,
you know? And that's just so fascinating. It doesn't really go the other way.
No. It's always done in a way that it's her thing. Oh my God, you're going to date her. She's got daddy issues.
Right. And it's a stain on her.
It's her stain. It's her burden to carry.
Yes. And it's a thing of men should stay away from her as well. So not only was she treated poorly by a man, but now she gets no man, right? Or she should be avoided by
so
men.
Crazy.
Has anyone ever use that phrase with you? Not that you have
Probably
that,
not
but
to my
like,
face, but probably behind my back. I think, well, I mean, I get all kinds of stuff. I think a lot of people say a lot of things and assume that again, make a lot of assumptions about me and why I'm a feminist and what led to this terrible, terrible thing where I believe that men and women should be equal.
Sure.
All of the tragedy in my life that led to that point. But yeah, like, I mean, not to my face though. Like I'm also, I talk so much about having a great dad, and there's a whole chapter in my book about my dad. So I think it's very easily refuted if it was thrown at me.
yeah.
And actually, I laugh with my sister. We're like, we had like too much of a good dad. Like that's why we can't find. Like the standard is so high, and it's almost like. And again, not to say that my dad is perfect. He would be, if he listened to this podcast, this is a safe space for my talking about my dad because he doesn't listen to this podcast. But if he were to listen, anytime I do speak so highly of him, and even when I showed him the part in my book about him, he read it with almost like just so much resistance. And he finished it, and the first thing he said is like, okay, I'm glad you don't paint me out to be perfect. Like he's afraid of being put on a pedestal because he doesn't feel perfect and he doesn't feel like he deserves to be placed so high for doing what he, I think, thinks is the bare minimum, right? Like being a nurturing, loving father to your child. You know, he doesn't deserve a cookie or a trophy.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I'm just fascinated. Can you tell me like as a dad, I was telling the two of you before that when my first daughter was born, and I encourage all dads to do this. It's such good research. Find women in your life. I found 10 women in my life that I like really respected and thought were incredible women. And I wrote them an email and said, I'm putting you all on this chain. Can you please respond with 3 things your dad did awesome and 3 things he could have done better? So I can have some, because I grew up with brother. I don't have a lot of like relationship with younger girls, especially raising them. And I got a lot of really good feedback back. And that began for me a thirst and a desire to like every woman in the studio we've asked this question to, and it's really fascinating. So can you tell me?
Well, wait, I want to know what you learned. Like, what did you learn when doing that before we do it?
So I got back the highest one of the 10 that like was uniform was that my dad didn't treat me different. It didn't feel like I was being treated like a girl.
Right.
That he was open to what I was exposed to was what a person should be exposed to as opposed to what a girl should be exposed to.
Okay.
And it's so good to hear that because I just like wouldn't have expected that would be the first one.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Another one that I'm very interested in talking to you about is another uniform response was and it went in the bad category, was he was too strict. And it made me feel like he didn't trust me, which threw me for a loop because it was so, almost every one of them said it, but this was all in a group of women that I super respected.
Wow.
So that was like interesting to me. I didn't know how to handle that part of the data.
Because you're saying they were such incredible women.
These are unbelievable women that if I had to choose who are my favorite women in my life, I'd pick these women.
These 10 women.
And in the bad category from them came, my dad was too strict, made me feel like he didn't trust me.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was wondering like, oh, is that actually something that has helped create all this incredibleness?
Right.
What would you say?
I mean, like my dad was extremely, it was impossible it felt impossible to please him and to be good enough in terms of like, at school and just in anything that I really did. Like his standards were very high and he was very emphasized discipline and work ethic so much. And that is my strongest, like my work ethic, but to a T and to a problem at certain points. But 100%, like that's why, that's my daddy issue.
Yeah.
And it became the reason why I do, like I work really, really hard.
You're listening to the Man Enough Podcast. We'll be right back. Hey everyone, it's Jamey Heath here from the Man Enough Podcast. I want to talk to you about the many ways the education system in America is rigged against our kids and how it's time to work toward a better system where business and politics don't drive the decisions made in schools. And that's why I want you to check out the brand new podcast, The Citizen Stewart Show. It's an inside look at the dark forces affecting our schools and our democracy and how together we can make improvements for our kids and our country. Now, the Citizen Stewart Show is hosted by Chris Stewart, who's witnessed the systemic inequities in education firsthand as a parent, education activist, and former school board member. And each week, he and co-host Ravi Gupta, a former Obama staffer and superintendent of a network of charter schools in the South, share an inside look at how the education system in America is rigged against our kids and what we can do to change it. So join the conversation with The Citizen Stewart Show every Tuesday on the Lost Debate Podcast Network. You can find The Citizen Stewart Show on Amazon, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you get your shows. All right. Welcome back to the Man Enough Podcast.
What would you say he did incredible in detail, and what did he do that you could have done better?
I feel like I'm gonna start crying.
That's fine.
And so I'm trying.
No, this is what we're about.
Yeah, but
I cried on here. You got me the first time.
I know, right? No, because it's like, there's so much I want, like, there's so much I'm angry that I didn't get from my dad, and there's so much that I wish he had done differently. And one of those things is like what did you call it? Or authority or discipline?
Yeah,
strict, right? I wish he had been kinder, and more encouraging. At the same time, more present. I think that a lot of fathers, my father was one of them. Like, he had so much pressure on his shoulders. Like, he was carrying the weight of the family and all of us, and he took care of my mom. And oh my God, I'm really gonna bawl. No, I'm trying to keep it together, and this is how he really took care of my mom, and he took care of us. And I didn't appreciate how hard that was for him, and how much of that caretaking of us or caregiving of us meant taking away from himself.
Mm-hmm.
And what I wish now is that he could, first of all, share what that was like for him, because we've all, in a lot of families that grew up with difficulty, you end up kind of hopefully coming together and being able to talk about it afterwards and repair. And we've all kind of been able to do it. But my dad doesn't share how everything affected him. He just, I think, is still holding on to it as a way to keep it all together and keep himself together. So I wish he had taken care of himself too. And I wish he could take care of himself and give to himself in the way that he's given to all of us. So that doesn't answer your question. My God, I feel like when my dad won't be with me, there will be so much that I haven't told him. And I don't feel that way about my mom. I feel like my mom and I get to talk about a lot of things. And that's my biggest fear in life is we won't have shared and reached the potential of intimacy and connection that is possible. And I feel like I'm not alone.
No.
I feel like there are a lot of people who want to connect deeply with their dads, but don't really know how to.
Yeah.
And I think that their dads also feel that way. And so you just end up talking about stuff. And again, whatever that is for you, doing activities with your dad and bonding in other ways. But I think that from both sides, there's this deep yearning for intimacy. And I have so much intimacy with my dad. My dad did everything for me, everything. And my dad, my dad gave me my bath at night. My dad read me a story every night. He made my monkey talk. I was obsessed with monkeys. And when I was having a bad day, he would put the little monkey, she would pop her head in my door, and he did all of that. And yeah, there's nothing I could say that would really, there are not enough words in the English language for me to really express how important my dad is to me. So anyway, 3 things. Yeah,
that'll do.
3
That's
things just
amazing.
feels it's all those, everything.
To your point, I had a moment where it was probably 6 years ago where everybody gets to the place where your parents are your heroes, and then you realize they're real people.
Yeah.
And you have to go through that process. And we were kind of a little bit in that process, me and my dad, and I was questioning why certain things went the way they did. And I got a sense that it was just a little bit tense and rough.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I just sat down and I was I know that it's a little weird right now. I'm gonna do a top 10 list of things that are just awesome about you.
Great.
And I just remember sitting down, I was on tour somewhere, and I just wrote out, these are all the things when I think of you that make me really happy and that you've given me that are indispensable, and just sent it off. I think simple little things like that can once you commit to just doing it, it's really fun and sweet, and then you just send it off.
Yes.
And he didn't even respond, but he got it.
He didn't respond?
I think he just said this made me very emotional or something sweet. Really sweet. Yeah.
First, Liz, thank you for sharing what you did about your dad.
Oh, wait, before you go?
No.
It makes me so happy.
No, Andy's crying.
No. We're spending this podcast. Listen, the state of men is not incredible at the moment. And so there's a lot to talk about that is not measuring up, not doing good enough. Shit, blew it again.
Yeah.
there's a lot of that. And I love to ask this question to women, just like strangers at a coffee shop. Be like, tell me about your dad. And and I feel connected to the group of men doing things right. When I hear that your dad held the monkey, I'm like, yes, there's redemption in this whole thing. We're pushing towards something that is better than where we're at the moment. And so it's really good for me and for anyone listening to hear just about men being incredible. Sounds like you had a great dad. Sorry.
I appreciate you sharing it and sharing so emotionally about it. Allowing yourself to be vulnerable to us and to those listening. That's sweet to hear you talk about your dad. I wonder, well, I don't wonder, but we were talking earlier about how my daughter might speak of me.
Yeah.
So I have 2 daughters, 32 and 5. And I wonder what my daughter would say if you asked her 2 or 3 things I did right, 2 or 3 things I could have done better. In fact, you know what I'm going to do right now? Live right now.
Yes.
Hello, baby girl. Are you driving?
Yes.
So we are live on the Man Enough podcast right now. Say hello, Jazmin.
Okay. Hey.
I have a question for you. We're having a conversation centered around daddy issues. That oftentimes it's blamed on a woman if they have issues with their father, that it's the woman's fault rather than the fault of the father. And we're asking some questions, and I thought I'm going to ask you live.
Okay, let's do this.
And be honest here. Don't worry about, I can take it all, whatever.
Okay.
Would you mind sharing 3 things that you think I did right? And let me frame it with this. Because you have a sister, Day, who's 5, and I want to be a good daddy to her and be better than I was with you. Tell me 3 things I did right and 3 things I could have did better.
Okay. 3 things you did right. One of the biggest things I would say is you're a huge advocate for women, and you let me know that early on. One of the big things you would tell me is my body is my body. And wow, what a tough question. And an emotional question too, just because my whole image of you is I feel like I'm the woman I am today, and I have such a positive outlook on myself because of you. And I feel safe in my own body, and I feel safe with you because of what you were teaching me at a young age. So I feel like one of the things would be reminding me that my body is my body, and that it's sacred and it's precious, and, how much you advocated for just women in general. I saw how you treated my mom, even though you were divorced. You did nothing but treat her like a queen. And I saw that, things were rough at times, and I saw that too. But within each argument and within each moment of frustration, I saw you handle that with such love towards her, even if it was just for me to be able to witness that. And the last thing I would say being open. I'd never felt uncomfortable to share anything about anything with you because you created that space for me to be able to talk about anything I needed to, whether that was sex, whether that was my body and changes and any of the things. I was able to just share those things without feeling, like you were pointing a finger at me or like you were uncomfortable. So you created that space for me. So those are the three things I would say. And what you could have done better.
Okay, gotta go. Sorry.
Okay, love you.
No. Go. And just don't worry about having to justify them. Just list them and go.
That's a hard question to answer, Daddy. What you could have done better. Oh man. I don't have an answer for that. I know that sounds like at the top of my head, I don't have an answer of what you could have done better. I'm sure there are things you could have done better.
Let me just hold on.
This is Andy, Jazmin.
Let me just remind you that this is going out to men that want to be better dads. So you're not saying it for him or for them. You're saying it for the little girls that these guys are going to be fathers to.
Mm-hmm.
Think about them and try again.
I think really, even, I don't know, I mean, you really created a space for me to be able to share a lot of my life. So I think one of the biggest thing when it comes to, men raising daughters is that space that needs to be created to allow them to, there's all these changes that are happening with them. There's all these things that they're feeling. And a lot of the times with little boys, we give them that space to feel those feelings of change. And it's like, oh, well, boys will be boys. And I think with you, Daddy, I think you did a really good job with creating that space for me. And if anything,
she can't do it.
Maybe I can't do it. I can't do it. It's not even with
Come on.
thinking of other men in mind. It's just because this is what my experience was.
There could have been something. Could I have been more present? Could I have been taking you to Disneyland more? Could I have? I don't know.
Maybe, you know what? Maybe the biggest thing I would say is following through with certain things. Saying you're going to be there or saying we're going to do something and that not actually happening is one of the things I would say. Following through with what you say you're going to do, following through with, we have these conversations and, that's the one thing I could maybe say right now off the top of my head.
I love you, Jazmin.
That's fair.
Thank you.
That was so awesome. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you, baby. I want to keep you on the phone and I want to talk to you now and just leave the podcast now and just have a conversation with you. But I have to work also. And so finish the podcast and I'm going to call you right after. I love you so much.
Okay, love you, bye.
Bye. So, what's interesting is she wouldn't say something that I could do better. Maybe because I'm on the phone. So that's encouraging.
She tried.
But I know I could have done a lot of things better.
I think it's a lot of respect, too. I think if you asked her that in a closed format that wasn't going out to a ton of people, maybe.
Could have. But, I really, really try hard to show up for my kids. For kids. I don't do it all perfectly, that is for sure. Like, I asked her about being present. I was always busy, raised in the music industry on the road, doing stuff in the studio late hours. So certainly but I really tried to address things and make safe space and not raise my voice and listen. And even if she said something that was way where my inner self was going like, holy shit, to have a poker face and allow her to share it. And then reflect and stuff. So, godly, I hope that she's daddy issues. I don't know if she would say I have daddy issues. Thank God. And if she does, that's okay too. I want to know about them so I can be better for my daughter Day. Let me answer a quick thing about my father because I had learned a lot from my father. I think it's an important question to ask women But I think equally it's important to know from boys 3 things their dad did good and 3 things that could have been better, so that we can then not repeat those cycles and then actually repeat the stuff that was good and be and show up for our children. My dad never let me speak ill of my mother or any woman. That was never allowed. I have a hard issue with my mom because my mom and I have a funny relationship. She's bipolar, and I took on a lot. If there was any complaint, anything, it was not allowed. You show up for your mother. You can still have your feelings about it, but with her, you show up. You're not allowed to speak. And they were divorced, and he treated her like a queen all the time. So I learned that. I learned that from my father. I never saw him backbite, talk about people, ever. I have no memory of my father speaking ill of another person.
Wow.
Honest to God.
I can attest to that.
Even the people, unfortunately, that hurt me. And we recently had a conversation about that. So one thing he maybe could have done better was pretend to talk badly about the people that hurt me, for a moment, maybe when I needed that. Protection. And talk through things. Like, we didn't talk about sex, and I was having sex against my wishes. So that would have been good. If maybe we had a conversation about it, I could have known to say no, or like, that's not okay, or this is my body, or stay away. So, things like that. But in terms of showing up for humanity and for women and for my, when I got divorced, I've been married 3 times. Clearly I have, I don't know, mommy issues. I don't know. Jesus.
Isn't it funny that doesn't stick though?
Doesn't stick the same. It's not the same.
Because mommy issues would have to have you then be the one that holds it. And in our brains, we've been trained like, clearly not you.
But I've been married twice before. And one of the things my dad gave me was I was not allowed to speak ill of my first wife, ever.
Wow.
Even if I was like, we had some problems here. He was real careful, like, we can talk about your problems, so long as you are not putting her in a category in the dumpster.
Wow.
You be accountable, and you make sure you elevate her all the time. And if I ever hear you talk ill about her, you will hear from me.
Wow.
And that will always be my daughter, no matter what you guys go through. And then I got married a second time, and the same thing. Just not allowed. Show up. Even when you're struggling, it's not to say don't feel your feelings, work through them, but you don't work them on and throw her under the bus. That's not what happens. So he did really good with that. My father gave me this stuff about treating people fairly, no matter what, and then he could have shown up better when it came to talking about my pain. We didn't talk about that. He didn't maybe know how.
Yeah. Couldn't hold, but do you think he knew how to hold space for his own pain? Part of that is.
Yeah, I don't know. I never heard my dad talk. That's the other thing. I never heard my father talk about his struggles.
Yeah.
Never heard him, or we never had that conversation.
Which then can make it almost unrelatable.
Yeah.
At points.
Yeah.
Well, if he can't hold space for what's hard in his life, he can't hold space for what's hard
and he may have held space for it. I don't know. I just never experienced it.
Sure.
I don't want to say that he didn't do the work, or I don't know, but I just never.
Right.
So.
Right.
How about you, man? Tell us a few things. I took a lot of time because I
so
brought
good.
my daughter
That was
on.
This
incredible.
is so good. Red Grammer is my dad. He is a Grammy-nominated children's singer. If you have children, go check out all of his incredible music. My favorite is Teaching Peace. This is what I come from.
Wow.
Teaching peace all the world around.
You and me, every city, every town. One by one, in our work and in our play, we are teaching peace by what we do and what we. This is like what I grew up with. This is the guy that was my dad. So
Hero.
So let's go the super positives. I grew up in a house where the career was based on meaning, not on money, which is dope. To be raised in a household where no matter what, and there were times where it was tight and money wasn't good and we were stressed, where maybe other people would go like, this is a little bit nuts to be a children's performer. Let's go like figure out how to make some more money. And it was like, no, the purpose of life is to be here to share, to do things that are of value, to lift other people up, especially children. And he did that. And that was awesome.
Mm.
And in no small part is why I do what I do. He was, we have now been doing this podcast with you guys for a little bit. Whatever toxic masculinity is, my dad is nowhere near any of that. Just not there. I remember I was in a car one time and I was with my friend's dad and he was questioning my father and saying like, but like, what's the end game? This guy was very wealthy and he was saying, my wings aren't, if there's like angel wings, my wings aren't totally clean, but I've like made an incredible family. And then my family has like a big house and we have what we need and we go on vacations and we do our thing. And I remember saying out loud to him, like, yeah. My dad's wings are clean. Which is a little boy to have that be the person that you're looking up to is like really powerful.
Yeah.
To say that and mean it to this other man who's telling you other status symbols that I didn't have at the moment and could, by processing through it, go like, oh, my family, this is what we're getting. This is what we're going after. And that was really cool. And he's really funny and just a blast. Me and my dad are very much alike. We love to be in a room with lots of people and run around and try to make everybody happy. What he could have done better, it's interesting because, we talk about this and it's just so, how far up the line do you want to go to figure out why people are the way they are? My dad, I think he was 2 when his dad, my granddad, had an affair with my grandma's friend, like someone in the community left and took all the money. And my dad had like his first memory, he says, is of his dad like just like leaving.
Oh, wow.
So we've had a lot of talks about that and how that at different stages of his life, he would recognize the whole. He's like, because he's a pretty like fun guy. And if he was in this room, you'd fall in love with him. A lot of you guys have already. But just, I remember watching my father grapple with masculinity. Like, I remember just like sitting at a restaurant and the food comes out and it's not as good. There's something's wrong with it. And then him, how do you say you want something better, but not like go too hard or go too soft? I just remember like watching the processing of how do I be a man right now? And I remember as a young kid going like, oh, you're struggling with that. That's interesting. What does that say about me or where do we land here? And so that's not his fault. He's pretty... like he likes to keep it like happy when it could go a little bit deeper about things that are uncomfortable. He's down to go super deep about about life and spirit, and there's like all this stuff. Joy, like, man, the point of life. Let's go all the way to the depths of the universe. When it comes to just like, oh, this is an uncomfortable, deep conversation we have to have. I think he could have done that better. Yeah.
So how do we, with all this, how do we do better? How do we take these learnings, these discussions, and then in the scope of what we're talking about, redefining masculinity, showing up better for our families, for women, for men?
I think especially for men, we talk about it a lot.
Just acknowledging it.
This is like, I am about to go, as soon as my daughter can know that her body is her body, she already knows in our own ways, but how do you continue to, like we've said those words to her, but how do you continue to stay open and create? Like, I want to be like you in many of the ways you're.
You know, the funny story is my daughter, we told her so much about her body. Probably, and I wasn't even aware of this, probably because I was molested at a young age, and I just wanted to like have her know in all circumstances and to feel safe. So it was always 1 year old, 2 years old. She was said, "Don't touch me," then it was like hands off, right? Even if it was like putting on a diaper, it was always respected. So if her father wouldn't touch her or her parents, then certainly a boy would not be able to touch her if she didn't want him to. So one time she's like 11 years old, maybe like 9 years old, and she was lying about something about schoolwork over and over, and I kept giving her chances. Like, so the teacher told me this, blah, blah, blah. She was like, nah, didn't happen like that. And she kept going, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go away for a minute. I'm going to come back. I want you to think about who you are and your soul and your purpose, and I'm going to ask you again. And if you lie to me again, I'm going to really freak out. So I ask her again, and she lies again. This is after like so many chances, and it broke my heart, and I lost my cool. And I grabbed her by the arm, and I was like, you're going to go to your room now. It was like one of the times I was physical with her. And I grab her, and I'm like, escorting her to her room. And then she looks at me, 9 years old or so. Get your hands off me. It's my body. Do not touch me. Now, this is in the middle of her just really lying to me, and she deserves to be punished or like.
Yeah. Reprimanded.
And I was like, you're right. I'm not allowed to touch your body. Get your ass in the room right now. Right? But even in that moment, being challenged, wanting her to know and respect that.
Yeah, and I think so much of what you're saying, and my favorite thing about what Jazmin said about you is that she learned to respect herself as a woman in seeing you respect other women. So often, I think that this is backed up by data, right? That men want very empowered daughters who are assertive and confident. But when it comes to their wives, they're less comfortable with those qualities. They actually want a woman who's more, submissive or more less commanding, less assertive, and that disconnect, your daughters will feel, right? And your daughter will not learn to respect herself as a woman by you. I mean, you should be respecting her, but the best way that she will learn that she is valuable as a woman is to see you value a woman and see you value her mother and other women in the world. And I certainly saw my dad do that. My dad never, it's funny because Jazmin says, there's divorce and all of that. And I think I've seen so many men disparage the women that they're divorced to and do it in front of the kids. And I can't think of it infuriates me really, because what message are you sending about women and what is she going to think about herself? It's causing harm to her to, talk shit about her mom. So I really, and I think that means sharing in domestic labor. That means, right, like not just saying nice things about her mother, but doing things for her mother and being equal with her mother.
Can I just say to our listeners, there's a bunch of you men that are divorced.
Yeah.
Or have a child with a woman that you're not married to, that you're co-parenting. Do this for them anyways, but for your own life, it is much easier if you put in the work in the beginning. And even if it's so challenging, treat them fairly. When it comes to them embracing a new man in their life, embrace the man. You do this as hard as it is, and your life is easier and better. It might take a year, might take 2 years, 5 years, but it changes, and your children see this, and then your children are not in the middle where like, well, I love my dad, but I can't fully embrace this new woman in his life because it's betraying my mom. And I love my mom, but I can't embrace this man because my father's going to be angry. It takes that out of it.
It does. Yeah.
And now and then life is just easier because we want life to be joyful and easy. You don't want to deal with all this stuff. Exactly. And I swear it happens. So for those of you who are dealing with this, and I get it, it's hard.
Yeah.
Just keep showing up. Yeah. Keep doing it. I promise you do that and you go through it like any muscle, and it ends up so much easier for your own life.
And look, that's one of the first things your daughter said. Really. Like she saw that. And that was, I think that's pretty extraordinary. Yeah. And I think, again, it's I don't know if it's rare or not, but I dated someone who was divorced, and it was the best relationship I'd ever been in. And the way that he was divorced was very attractive to me. The way that he treated the mom, of his children was beautiful. And now I go, instead of when I go on dates, I'm like, do I want to marry this person? It's like, would I mind being divorced with this person?
Oh, right.
Is my new standard.
That's a good one to start your standard. If you look at that, if you are dating someone that has a mother and is shares a child or was married, if you see how he treats her, someone that he's no longer romantically in, then that's a little bit of a sign of how he will treat you.
It's like that for everything, right? Yeah. It's someone who speaks ill of other people all the time. At a certain point, it's going to be you, right? You're not special. You're not special. I think that's a great. And thank you for saying that. I think what I see with a lot of I think divorced people, but particularly perhaps divorced men, it is not enough of what you're saying, right? Like put your ego aside for a minute. It won't just be good for you, but it won't just be good for your children and your family, but also yourself.
To me, that's man enough. Talking about this
Yes.
is indeed man enough. When you can have these conversations,
Yeah.
you know, and ask a woman like you do, tell me 3 things about your dad that worked.
Yeah.
3 things
such a
that could have
good
been better so
question.
that you can be a better father. I think we should ask women that are, ask women that are happily married, that you believe or say that they are. What are 3 things that your husband does for you that work? Some 3 things that maybe don't work so well.
That's good.
Yeah.
So that we can be better,
Yes.
show up
Yeah.
for our husband, our wives,
Yes.
or our partners, or
Or friends, right?
Or
It's just, it's a
friends.
great question.
I just get so inspired and feel connected to the good side of men. When the answer's good, I'm like,
yeah.
it's so encouraging to me that there are so many great dads out there
there
that have
are.
a shot. You know, I desperately want my daughters to feel like they got what they needed, even though I'm sure through therapy there's going to be plenty of things.
And it's
But
never too
just-
late.
Yeah.
Even the dads that, like you say,
Yeah.
there's so many good dads. There's a lot of dads that aren't doing it perfectly that are still good dads. And there are some that maybe are deemed as not the great dad, but there's still opportunities.
I love this. I love this conversation.
I love it.
Laughing, crying.
Ugh.
You
Had
too.
everything.
Liz, I love it when you get, you're so.
And I bawl my eyes out.
I love your dad.
Oh, yeah, godly. How
What's
you
his
just
name?
described.
Andrew Plank.
Andrew. Good job, Andrew.
You're an Andrew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're the best.
You're the best. Yeah, because you oftentimes, Liz, you have such a command of language and thought and facts, statistics. And I think that a lot of people don't know this side of you.
I'm a little Pisces, I'm a little sensy.
that
I don't
has
remember what I
this-
said. I just remember being like, "You're so not being eloquent right now."
No,
like
that you have
You're being
and that's my dad's
showing
voice.
this
Get it together.
You're being so
sweetness
human.
and this human sweetness that's just tender. And I love it when you show that.
Thank you. Thank you for creating a space where I can.
Yeah, indeed.
I quiet cried a lot here.
You cried a lot?
Yeah.
All right.
That's actually a good thing to end on is like, why can't I just let it flow? This whole episode. I've been,
I know, right?
Ah.
My daughter's sitting there saying all these things, and I'm thinking, I'm trying to hold it back. Just keep it back.
Keep it. What does keep it together?
Yeah.
Why? This is
Although we are ones for sure that have no problem crying. So
no,
Yeah.
but you do. You did.
yeah, but in this moment right now we are talking. It's like mindful to just like keep it moving, not because there's a lot of instances that you cry, I cry. I don't know if that's the barometer right there.
I would say there's still something there that right now I didn't want to be like super
Too-
puffy faced, all crying.
Mhm.
Even
Yeah.
though we're talking about like hearing you
Yeah.
talk about your dad makes me so happy
Mm.
and like inspires me. And then your daughter really
my
got
God.
me. Holy
Me too.
shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm.
But still.
Yeah, there's a thing about crying that I have a problem with too. No, I love crying. Crying is super important. Crying when the subject is about something else, and then if I start crying or someone starts crying, like let's say we're talking about racism and a white guy starts crying because he feels so terrible
Right.
about what's
It's
happening,
different.
it's genuine. He's like, I'm so sorry what's happening to you. All of a sudden now the focus comes on
Yes.
that person.
Sure. Okay.
Right.
And now it's like, oh my God, he's feeling this poor guy.
Right.
And that, so we're talking about an issue that's like about saving women, let me not say saving women, but saving humanity by uplifting and getting out of the way of women. And I didn't like the way I said it the
That's
first
a
time.
great. That's like that should be on a T-shirt.
And
That's
and then
what
if
it
I start
is.
crying in that moment, feeling bad, then it becomes about, oh, Jamey, he's
Okay.
rather than that. So that maybe there's some of that, just
Yeah.
not wanting to make it about us. I don't know.
Mm.
all
Or the
right.
fact that there's like 12 people staring at us right now and like 5 cameras.
It's been really sweet.
Yes.
Let's sign off and let
Yes.
everybody know where they
This is
can
my
find
favorite
us.
one.
Yes. If you like what you have heard,
Mhm.
you can go visit a website called manenough.com/podcast. You can go on Apple Podcasts. You can go on Spotify. You can go on YouTube.
YouTube.
You can find us all those
You
places.
can go to andygrammer.com
You can go
because
to
he's going to post this
andygrammer.com.
all the time.
He is.
I will, of
Andy
course.
will be reposting everything.
Yeah.
That's right. You can go to TikTok and see our fun TikToks.
We do TikToks.
We miss you, Justin. This would have been
We
great
miss
to
you,
have
buddy.
you here, but
Yes.
we'll get you next time around. I'm Jamey Heath.
We are man enough.
We are man enough.
We are man enough.
Oh, that was good. That was a good one. They were
As-
rough
as long,
yesterday.
as long as she
No,
does
she
it.
nailed it.
It's
She
a 7
super
point.
nailed it.
All right. I'm Jamey Heath,
Andy Grammer.
Liz Plank.
and this is
Man enough.
And when it's time, if I've done it right, only a good man will feel like home. But fathers always get to be first loves, and I love you more than you could understand.